She lay crumpled at the bottom of the stairs, tears streaming down her face as she begged for help. Her mother-in-law stood above, arms crossed, that cruel smile playing on her lips. But when the front door opened and footsteps echoed through the mansion, that smile vanished instantly. Before we begin this story of betrayal, manipulation, and ultimate justice, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't believe how this unfolds. And if you've ever dealt with a toxic family member, drop a comment below. You're not alone. Now let's dive in. The morning sunlight filtered through the crystal chandelier, casting rainbow patterns across the marble floor of the Harrison mansion. Lauren Harrison moved carefully down the grand staircase, one hand on the polished oak railing, the other cradling her 7-month pregnant belly. Each step was deliberate, measured. She'd learned to be careful in this house, though she could never quite figure out why she always felt like she was walking on eggshells. At the bottom of the stairs stood Diane Harrison, her mother-in-law, arms crossed over her designer blouse, watching with those sharp eyes that never seemed to miss anything. Diane had that look on her face again, the one that made Lauren feel small, inadequate, like she was always doing something wrong even when she was just trying to get through the day. "You're moving like a turtle," Diane said, her voice dripping with barely concealed contempt. "In my day, pregnant women didn't act so helpless. I was running marathons when I was carrying Brandon." Lauren bit her lip, fighting back the urge to respond. She'd learned that talking back to Diane only made things worse. Brandon would be home in a few hours from his business trip to Seattle, and she just needed to make it through the morning without another confrontation. She took another step down, focusing on the stairs beneath her feet. That's when her foot caught on something. The carpet, which had been smooth and secure just yesterday, suddenly shifted beneath her weight. Lauren's eyes widened as she felt herself losing balance, her arms flailing as she tried to grab the railing. But it was too late. Her body pitched forward, and she tumbled down the remaining 8 steps, her pregnant belly hitting the edges as she fell. The impact stole her breath. Pain exploded through her back, her legs, everywhere. Lauren landed in a heap at the bottom of the stairs, her vision blurring with tears. She tried to move her legs, but something felt wrong, terribly wrong. A sharp, shooting pain radiated from her lower back, and when she tried to push herself up, her legs wouldn't respond the way they should. "Help!" Lauren gasped, looking up at her mother-in-law through tears. "Diane, please, I can't feel my legs properly. Something's wrong with the baby. Please, call someone." But Diane didn't move. She stood there looking down at Lauren with an expression that made Lauren's blood run cold. It wasn't concern. It wasn't shock. It was something else entirely. Diane's lips curved upward into a small, satisfied smile, like someone who just won a game they'd been playing all along. "You're being dramatic," Diane said calmly, examining her manicured nails. "You always do this, Lauren. Always seeking attention, always playing the victim. It's exhausting, really." Lauren couldn't believe what she was hearing. Pain pulsed through her body in waves, and all she could think about was her baby, her precious baby who might be hurt. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking. "I'm not being dramatic. I really can't move right. Please call for help. Call Brandon. Call anyone." Diane took a slow step closer, and Lauren noticed something in her eyes, something dark and calculated. "If you tell Brandon about this little accident," Diane said quietly, bending down so her face was level with Lauren's, "I'll make absolutely sure he knows what a burden you've become, how you're always causing problems, how you're not strong enough for this family." The words hit Lauren like another physical blow. She tried to reach for her phone, which had fallen from her pocket during the tumble, but it was just inches beyond her grasp. With a trembling hand, she stretched her fingers toward it, ignoring the screaming pain in her back. Diane saw what she was doing. Without hesitation, she stepped forward and kicked the phone across the marble floor, sending it sliding far out of reach. "I don't think so," Diane said softly. That's when Lauren realized with horrifying clarity that this wasn't an accident. The way Diane stood there so calm, so prepared, the carpet that had suddenly become loose, this had been planned. All of it. Diane walked to the nearby sitting room and poured herself a cup of coffee from the service that the housekeeper had left earlier. She took a slow sip, savoring it, while Lauren lay on the cold marble floor, fighting against waves of pain and fear. The clock on the wall ticked steadily. Each second felt like an eternity. Brandon won't be home for 3 more hours, Diane said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. That gives us plenty of time to figure out how we're going to handle this. Lauren's mind raced. This couldn't be happening. She'd known Diane was cold, knew she'd never approved of her son's choice to marry someone from such an ordinary background, as she liked to say. But this was beyond cruel. This was evil. Through the fog of pain, Lauren remembered other incidents. The time she'd gotten violently ill after eating food Diane had prepared, and Diane had blamed it on Lauren's sensitive stomach. The medication that kept mysteriously going missing. The way Diane had slowly, methodically convinced Brandon that Lauren's family was too demanding, until Lauren barely saw them anymore. It had all been so subtle, so calculated, that Lauren had questioned her own perceptions. But this was undeniable. This was real. Diane finally pulled out her phone, but she didn't dial 911. She called someone else, someone whose number she apparently had memorized. "Mitchell," she said smoothly, "I need you to come to the house immediately. There's been a small accident, and I need your discretion." Within 20 minutes, a man arrived carrying a medical bag. Dr. Mitchell Crane, Diane's personal physician, a man who'd been treating the Harrison family for years. He examined Lauren briefly, his hands quick and impersonal, while Diane stood nearby, watching. Lauren tried to tell him how much pain she was in, how worried she was about the baby, how something felt seriously wrong with her back and legs. But Dr. Crane barely listened. Instead, he stepped away with Diane, and Lauren watched through tears as the two of them whispered in the corner. She saw Diane slip something into his hand, saw the way he nodded and pocketed whatever she'd given him. "Just a minor sprain," Dr. Crane announced, coming back to where Lauren lay. "You'll be fine in a few days. Nothing to worry about. No need for a hospital visit." "No," Lauren protested, her voice weak. "Something's really wrong. Please, I need to go to the hospital. The baby is fine," Dr. Crane said firmly, already preparing a syringe. "I'm going to give you something for the pain. It'll help you rest." Before Lauren could protest further, she felt the needle pierce her arm. Within minutes, a drowsy fog began to settle over her mind. She fought against it, knowing something terrible was happening, but her body wouldn't cooperate. The last thing she saw before her eyes grew too heavy to keep open was Diane's satisfied smile. When Lauren drifted back to consciousness, she didn't know how much time had passed. Her mouth felt dry, her head fuzzy. She tried to move and realized she was in a bed, but not her bed. Looking around, she recognized one of the mansion's guest rooms. Someone had moved her while she was unconscious. Panic surged through her. She tried to sit up, but pain lanced through her back so intensely that she cried out. That's when she heard footsteps, and Diane appeared in the doorway. "Finally awake," Diane said. "I was beginning to wonder if Mitchell gave you too much sedation." Lauren's hands went to her belly. She could feel the baby moving, thank God, but something still felt wrong. "I need a hospital," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Please, Diane. Whatever you think of me, the baby is your grandchild. Please don't do this." Diane's expression hardened. "That baby," she said coldly, "is a Harrison, and I will not have it raised by someone as weak and pathetic as you. Do you know what I've sacrificed for this family? What I've built? I will not stand by and watch you ruin my son's life." "I love Brandon," Lauren said desperately. "I would never—" "Love," Diane laughed bitterly. "You don't know the first thing about love. You saw a wealthy man and saw your ticket out of your mediocre life. You think you're the first girl who tried to trap my son? You're not, and just like the others, you'll learn that you're not good enough for him." The cruelty in Diane's voice was staggering. Lauren realized that nothing she could say would reach this woman. Diane had convinced herself of a narrative, and no truth would penetrate it. As the medication began to wear off further, Lauren knew she had to act. She had to get help somehow, for herself and for her baby. Summoning every ounce of strength, she began to drag herself out of the bed. Each movement sent pain shooting through her body, but she couldn't give up. She remembered there was a phone in the study, one of those old landlines that Brandon kept for nostalgia. Lauren pulled herself across the floor, inch by agonizing inch. Sweat poured down her face. Her back screamed in protest, but she kept moving, focused only on reaching that phone, on getting help, on protecting her baby. She was halfway across the hallway when she heard Diane's voice behind her. "Where do you think you're going?" Lauren looked up to see her mother-in-law standing over her, and the mask had finally dropped completely. The polite society woman was gone, replaced by something darker, something twisted by years of control and manipulation. "You think you're special?" Diane hissed. "You're nothing, just another girl who got lucky for a little while. When Brandon sees how weak you are, how much trouble you cause, how you can't even walk down a flight of stairs without falling apart, he'll leave you himself. I won't even have to do anything." "He loves me," Lauren whispered. "He thinks he does," Diane corrected, "but love fades, especially when it's based on nothing but physical attraction. My son needs someone strong, someone from a good family, someone who understands what it means to be a Harrison. Not some nobody who can't even take care of herself." Diane crouched down, her face inches from Lauren's. "And let me tell you something else," she said quietly. "Accidents happen to clumsy pregnant women all the time. Everyone knows that. If something were to happen to that baby, well, who's to say it wasn't your own carelessness? You did fall down the stairs after all." The threat was crystal clear, and Lauren felt ice flood through her veins. This woman, this monster, was threatening not just her, but her unborn child. Lauren had never felt so helpless, so terrified, so completely trapped. That's when they heard it, the sound of a car in the driveway, the slam of a car door. Diane's head snapped up, her face suddenly pale. "That can't be," she whispered. "He's not supposed to be home for hours." The front door opened, and a familiar voice called out, "Lauren? Mom? Anyone home?" It was Brandon. He was home early. Diane's satisfied smile vanished as if it had never existed. Her composure cracked, and Lauren saw something she'd never seen before: fear in Diane Harrison's eyes. "Brandon," Diane called out, her voice suddenly sugary sweet, trying to compose herself. "What a wonderful surprise. We weren't expecting you until... Where's Lauren?" Brandon's voice was closer now, and Lauren could hear the concern in it. He knew something was wrong. Lauren tried to call out, but her voice came out as barely a whisper. She tried again, louder this time. "Brandon, help me, please." Footsteps thundered through the house, and then Brandon was there, kneeling beside her on the floor. His face went white as he took in the scene. His wife on the floor, clearly in distress, his mother standing nearby looking guilty. "What the hell happened?" Brandon demanded, his arms going around Lauren carefully. "How long have you been like this? Why isn't she in a hospital?" "She fell this morning," Diane said quickly, her rehearsed story tumbling out. "Down the stairs, I called Dr. Crane, and he said she was fine, just a minor sprain." "She's being overdramatic, Brandon. You know how she gets." But Brandon wasn't listening to his mother. He was looking at Lauren, really looking at her, seeing the pain in her eyes, the way she was trembling. "How long ago?" he asked Lauren gently. "Hours," Lauren whispered. "Brandon, I can't feel my legs right. Something's wrong with my back. And the baby..." Brandon was already pulling out his phone, dialing 911. "I need an ambulance," he said urgently, giving the address. "My wife is pregnant and injured. She fell downstairs hours ago and hasn't received proper medical attention." "Brandon, really?" Diane tried to interject. "This isn't necessary," Dr. Crane said. "I don't give a damn what your pet doctor said," Brandon snapped, and Lauren had never heard him speak to his mother that way. "My wife is in pain, possibly seriously injured, and you called your personal physician instead of 911? Instead of calling me?" Diane's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. While they waited for the ambulance, Brandon pulled up something on his phone. Lauren watched as his expression changed from worry to confusion to absolute fury. He'd accessed the mansion's security footage, something he'd had installed months ago. "Mother," Brandon said, his voice deadly quiet, "why did you loosen the carpet on the stairs this morning?" The color drained from Diane's face completely. "Why?" Brandon continued, his voice shaking with rage. Did you refuse to help Lauren when she fell? Why did I just watch you kick her phone away from her? And why the hell did I just see you hand money to Dr. Crane? Diane stammered, tried to form words, but nothing coherent came out. The truth was there on Brandon's phone, undeniable and damning. My office, Brandon said coldly. Now, we're going to wait for the ambulance together, and then you and I are going to have a very serious conversation. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They were professional, efficient, asking Lauren questions and carefully examining her. Their faces grew serious when they checked her back and tested her leg responses. They brought a stretcher, secured her carefully, worried about spinal injury. As they loaded Lauren into the ambulance, Brandon stayed by her side, holding her hand. I'm so sorry, he whispered. I should have seen it. I should have protected you. You couldn't have known, Lauren said, though part of her wondered if maybe he could have, should have. At the hospital, the news was serious. Lauren had fractured vertebrae in her lower back, and the baby was showing signs of distress. They needed to do emergency surgery, they said, to prevent permanent damage and to make sure the baby was safe. Brandon never left her side, not even for a moment. He held her hand as they prepped her for surgery, whispering reassurances, promising her that everything would be okay, that he loved her, that he would never let anyone hurt her again. The surgery took hours. When Lauren woke up, groggy and confused, the first thing she saw was Brandon's face. He looked exhausted, like he'd aged years in a single day. But when he saw her eyes open, he smiled. The baby? Lauren asked immediately. Fine, Brandon said, his voice thick with emotion. Strong heartbeat. They said you'll both be okay, but you're going to need physical therapy. Lots of it. Relief flooded through Lauren so intensely that she started crying. Brandon held her carefully, mindful of her injuries, and cried with her. Later, when she was more alert, Brandon told her everything. How he'd suspected his mother's interference for months, the way she'd driven away his previous girlfriends, the way she seemed to sabotage any relationship he tried to have. He'd actually hired a private investigator weeks ago, gathering evidence, planning to confront her. He just never imagined she'd go this far. Police had come to the hospital to take statements. The security footage, combined with Dr. Crane's panicked confession once he realized he could lose everything, had been damning. Diane was arrested, charged with assault and reckless endangerment. Dr. Crane lost his medical license pending investigation. She's my mother, Brandon said quietly, staring at the hospital room wall. I never thought she could do something like this. I knew she was controlling. I knew she had issues, but this... She threatened the baby, Lauren said softly. She said accidents happen to pregnant women. Brandon's jaw clenched. She's not going to get anywhere near you or our child ever again. I promise you that. 3 months passed. 3 months of recovery, physical therapy, fear and healing, and slowly learning to trust again. Lauren had to relearn how to walk properly, had to fight through pain and frustration. But she did it. She was stronger than even she had known. Their daughter Grace was born healthy and perfect on a sunny Tuesday morning. Brandon cried when he held her for the first time, this tiny life that had survived so much already. They'd moved out of the mansion, refusing to live in that house of horrors anymore. Their new home was smaller, warmer, filled with light and laughter instead of cold marble and colder hearts. Lauren's family, whom she hadn't seen nearly enough of in the past year, were constant visitors, filling the house with love and support. Brandon had filed a restraining order against his mother. Diane had been required to attend therapy as part of her sentence to undergo psychiatric evaluation. She'd written letters, dozens of them, most full of justifications and blame. But the most recent one had been different, shorter, simpler. It almost sounded like a genuine apology, like maybe, finally, she was beginning to understand what she'd done. One evening, as Lauren rocked baby Grace to sleep, Brandon showed her the latest letter. Do you think people can really change? Lauren asked. Brandon was quiet for a long moment. I think people can change if they truly want to, he said finally, but we don't have to wait around to find out. We don't have to sacrifice our peace and safety, hoping for something that might never come. Lauren nodded. They learned the hard way that not all family is safe, that sometimes love means setting boundaries, that protecting yourself and your children is not selfish. It's necessary.